its last legs, but we will give it a try. All right, let me start with Mali. Our peacekeeping colleagues there report that the security situation in Bamako remains relatively calm with no major security incidents. While banks and large businesses have remained closed, most local shops and markets have reopened. We reiterate our call to reject violence, to respect the rule of law, and to preserve the rights of all Malians, including those of the president and the senior government officials who remain in detention. We also repeat our call for the immediate release of President Keita and the members of his government. The constitutional and democratic order must be restored as fast as possible. The UN mission in Mali remains deeply committed to implementing its mandate in support of the Malian peace process and the Malian people. In this regard, the mission stresses the need for full freedom of movement to allow the UN to carry out its mandate, to ensure the rotation of uniformed personnel, as well as medical evacuations in particular. Now, as our work continues, we're receiving reports just a few minutes ago that 4 peacekeepers were injured this morning when their logistics convoy was impacted by an explosion near Gao. As soon as we have more information to share with you, we will. Back in the Security Council in New York, the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Somalia, James Swan, briefed members of the Council. He told the diplomats that Somalia, like the rest of the world, is focused on confronting the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic is also having a severely negative economic impact on the country, with the government projecting an 11% decline in GDP this year. Mr. Swan added that the UN is working to reinforce the government's response. UN agencies, funds, and programs have reoriented their activities to give priority to the pandemic. But even before the virus, Mr. Swan stressed that more than 5 million Somalis were already in need of humanitarian assistance. 2.6 million people in the country are internally displaced, and 1 million are now being impacted by flooding. The country is also dealing with the worst desert locust infestation in 25 years. He added that the coming weeks will be decisive in determining how Somalia will proceed with the planned elections, adding that the UN will continue to support the country in this process. And today, the UN resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator for Lebanon, Najat Roshdi, announced that OCHA had begun the disbursement of $8.5 million from the Lebanon Humanitarian Fund to provide rapid support to families impacted by the devastating explosions in the Beirut port. More than 180,000 people are now being reached with life-saving humanitarian assistance, including through funding to NGOs delivering health, food assistance, and protection. The $8.5 million allocation is complementing $6 million allocated by the Central Emergency Response Fund, announced by Mark Lowcock 2 weeks ago, in fact. And turning to the Central African Republic, the UN peacekeepers there are continuing their technical logistical operation in support of the preparation of the country's presidential and legislative elections, scheduled for December 27th of this year. As part of his good offices, the head of the UN mission, Munker Njai, met with the country's authorities and members of the opposition earlier this week to discuss the political situation as well as the electoral process. That includes the ongoing voter registration operation. The UN mission is also providing security assistance to the National Electoral Management Body, which includes protection and transportation of electoral material, as well as security for voter registration agents in the 16 prefectures that make up the country. Now, turning a couple of COVID-19 specific notes. In Syria, we remain concerned about the rising number of COVID-19 cases across the country. As of this morning, the Syrian Ministry of Health confirmed 1,927 people tested positive for the virus. That includes, sadly, 78 deaths, but 445 people have recovered. In the northwest, 58 cases were confirmed as of yesterday, with the first deaths reported 2 days ago in the district of Haram in Idlib Governorate. And on August 18th, the World Health Organization is leading UN preparedness and mitigation measures across Syria, including the country's northwest and in the north. And in the Comoros, there are more than 400 confirmed COVID-19 cases and 7 deaths. The UN team, led by acting resident coordinator Marcel Ouattara, continues to provide support for national authorities to boost its health and socioeconomic responses in the pandemic. The UN Children's Fund and the World Health Organization are providing support to the Ministries of Health and Education in the procurement of transport and distribution of clean water, protective equipment, medical and sanitizing supplies to hospitals and schools, while the UN Population Fund collaborated with youth associations to install hundreds of hand washing stations across the country. On the socioeconomic side, our friends at UNDP put out a study on the impact of the virus on vulnerable populations and businesses, while working with the National Chamber of Commerce to assess the impact of the crisis on the private sector and formulate an inclusive recovery plan. And for its part, the UN Children's Fund continues to organize programs to support the most vulnerable children and mothers across the country, ensures continued access to education, sanitation, and nutrition. And in a survey conducted in sub-Saharan Africa by the World Health Organization, the survey has found that schools are fully open only in 6 of 39 countries surveyed. As a result, WHO and UNICEF are urging governments in Africa to promote the safe reopening of schools while taking measures to limit the spread of the virus. They say that the impact of extended education disruption is significant. Poor nutrition, increased exposure to violence, childhood pregnancies, and overall challenges in children's mental development are some of the key consequences faced by children. And as you may have seen the sad news on Monday this week, at least 45 migrants and refugees, including 5 children, died in a shipwreck off the coast of Libya. This is the largest recorded shipwreck in history this year. In a statement, the International Organization for Migration, the UN Refugee Agency, are calling for a review of international community's approach to this type of situation, adding there is an urgent need to strengthen the current search and rescue capacity to respond to distress calls. UNHCR and IOM are also calling on Libyan authorities to take firm steps against smugglers and traffickers. Some 37 survivors this week's shipwreck, mainly from Senegal, Mali, Chad, and Ghana, were rescued by local fishermen and later detained upon disembarkation in Libya. Turning to Asia, a strong monsoon season has caused floods and landslides over the past week, resulting in hundreds of casualties, the displacement of millions of people, and the destruction of infrastructure. These natural disasters are hitting countries already facing the COVID-19 pandemic and the socioeconomic consequences of the pandemic. The UN, the Red Cross, and other humanitarian organizations are supporting government-led responses in several countries, despite challenges in access to people in need due to COVID-19. Some of the most impacted countries have been Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, and China. In Bangladesh, our colleagues tell us that humanitarian organizations are providing shelter and rapid food assistance in Cox's Bazar, as well as repairs to damaged water, sanitation, and education facilities. In Pakistan, we are monitoring the situation in case support from the UN is required, and in Nepal and China, authorities are continuing the search and rescue operations in conjunction with humanitarian operations. And our friends at the UN the UN Conference on Trade and Development, better known as UNCTAD, today said that the oil spill off the coast of Mauritius illustrates how small island nations face an existential and development threat from pollution of ships endangering their vulnerable marine ecosystem and ocean economies. UNCTAD said the incident highlighted the need for universal participation in the international framework to provide support when environmental disaster strikes and ensure small island developing states are protected. The seas and their use are governed by several international conventions, but not all are ratified, leaving countries that might benefit and others are yet to enter into force. This creates murky waters when oil spills happen, as not all parties have the same liability and compensation recourse, depending on which kinds of ships are responsible for the pollution and whether they've signed up to existing conventions. More is obviously available online. And finally, I'm delighted to announce today a payment from our friends in Burundi, becoming the 110th country to pay its regular budget dues in full. All right, let's see what we can do here in terms of questions. Bear with me 2 seconds. I still have some technical issues here. Okay. I apologize, but something's not working. There we meet. All right, Edie, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Okay. Thank you very much, and sorry you can't see me. I'm at UN headquarters for the first time since mid-March and haven't figured out how to get the camera on this computer. Steph, I have two questions. First, the Belarus prosecutor has opened a probe against opposition activists. And I wondered whether the Secretary General has any.
Sorry, I didn't hear which country were you referring to?
I'm referring to Belarus.
Okay.
The prosecutor there has opened a possible prosecution against opponents. Opposition activists against the government, and I wondered whether the Secretary General had any comment on that. And then I have a question.
You know, our comment, our observations remain the same, is that it's very important that people be allowed to express themselves freely, express their political opinions freely, and free of any harassment, whether that be violent or in other ways. And your other question?
The other question is about the Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, who collapsed in a coma amid suspicions that he might have been poisoned. And I wondered whether the UN had any comment on that.
Yes, you know, I think we're following with concern the reports that Mr. Navalny has a sudden illness. We obviously wish him a speedy recovery. I think any allegations of suspected poisoning, if confirmed, should be fully investigated. Okay. Any other? Hold on a second. This is not my technical day. Okay, let's go to the chat box. Okay, Iftikhar, you had a question, and then Evelyn.
Thanks, Steph. Just wanted to know when the report of the Secretary General on the work of the organization will be released.
A bit late August, early September, but I need to check on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Stefano Vaccara, please.
Hello. Thank you very much. Yes, first question is what happened in the Mediterranean yesterday. Actually, not yesterday, on the 17th. Does the Secretary General have some new advice for governments like Italy, Malta, European countries, how they should handle the crisis in the Mediterranean of the migrants and refugees in order to prevent something that is happening the last practically over 10 years, and every summer we are here counting the deaths. So there is any new advice, anything that the Secretary General wish that those countries, the European countries, would do in this situation?
Our concern sadly remains the same, because we're seeing again and again people die on the high seas. I think it is very important first to recognize that Libya is not a safe place for refugees and migrants, and that countries need to live up to their obligations under international law, international refugee law, and everyone, whether a refugee, whether a migrant, needs to be treated with respect and needs to be given safety.
Yeah, I'm sorry. A quick follow-up. Maybe my question wasn't clear enough. In the past, the Secretary General, also because he was a former, leader of the UNHCR, he knows very well the issue. He complained. He complained and accused the European country not doing enough on the rescue operations and resolve the problem. So, is there any new idea that the Secretary General can give them?
Sadly, the situation remains the same, and the Secretary General's position remains the same. All right, Evelyn.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Steph, on Syria, is there any special protection for the UN workers there that you described? Because there are clashes all over the place, from Turkey, from ISIS, in several areas in the last week.
No, the safety of our staff is paramount. Obviously, each situation is being analyzed independently, and we take the security precautions that we need to take to make sure people are safe. But obviously, we continue to stand and deliver in what are essentially war zones. Gloria.
Thank you. My question is regarding Mali and Libya, where the virus exists. Is the rate higher in the city, or have we had any reports on the rebels? Because if they began getting really sick, they may decide to be less rebellious.
Well, that could be. I mean, the problem is that whether it's in Libya, or Mali or any place else, it is very difficult to get accurate counts of virus infections in places where there's limited access not only for the UN but for state authorities.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I did get go ahead, Stefano, and then I've got a question I need to answer.
Yes, I want to ask you again about Mario Pacciola's. Any news about the autopsy? I mean, we're waiting for any news about it, and I wonder. I think that the UN knows something. I wonder when they will share it.
No, I mean we're continuing to cooperate with the Italian authorities who've requested information from us within the framework of their investigation, and we're in the process of responding. Okay.
You are in the process of responding
to them. Yes, I mean the Italians have had questions, and we're responding. We're responding to them.
Do you know when exactly you would respond?
No, I mean we're in dialogue with the Italian authorities. I did get a question from one of your colleagues asking me about the reports, the press reports that the Secretary General had a phone call with Foreign Minister Zarif. I can confirm that he did speak to him this morning. The phone call was focused obviously on the issue of on Yemen, but also on Iran. And I want to correct a mistake that is in one of the media reports. That one of the media reports says the Secretary General had said that Washington had no basis of action under Resolution 2231. That is incorrect. It was not the Secretary General who said that, but the foreign minister. I will leave it at that. And unless anybody waves a question at me, we will talk to you later. Toby, you have a question. And Kirsten, you have a question. Yes.
Sorry, Steph, I just want to clarify on that last point. Foreign Minister Zarif and the Secretary General spoke about Yemen and what else?
And Iran and the situation regarding, obviously, the situation du jour. The press report from one of the Iranian agencies attributed comments to the Secretary General that he did not make. Kirsten, please.
Yes, the Secretary General is supposed to meet with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo today. what will the Secretary General's message be?
Well, let the U.S. side ask for the meeting. Let them, they will open up the discussion, and then the Secretary General will respond. But I don't want to get ahead of my boss.
Does the Secretary General still support the JCPOA? No, the United States is against it. Can you tell us, what his position
On
is?
that, the Secretary General's position, underscoring the importance of the JCPOA as an important diplomatic achievement, remains unchanged. Okay. Until Ibtisam speaks, you're on the screen, Kirsten.
Sorry, yes. Hi, Steph. Thank you. I have a question on the same topic. If the Secretary General will be asked by the Security Council to give, at his office, to give a legal opinion regarding
I lost you. I think I know where you were going with the question. Sorry, but since the question did include an if on a very difficult, sensitive subject, I will wait to see if the if comes to pass.
No, but the Security Council is probably going to have a deadlock regarding who is in right or wrong. If he asked by the Security Council to give a legal opinion, is he going to
We obviously, as a principle, respond to requests from the Security Council, but let's see what the request is, how it's worded, and what happens. I don't want to get ahead of my skis, as we say. Okay. All right. Third last call. Excellent. Okay. Talk to you later. Bye.